Welcome, everyone, to today's presentation about Merit, the Maine Reinvestment Trust, Maine Retirement Investment Trust. We're going to get started here in just 1 minute. We're waiting for folks to start filing in the Zoom room, but you are in the right place for today's Merit informational webinar. Thank you so much for joining us and for the time today. We're just going to get started here in about 30 seconds. Thank you again. In the meantime, on the next slide, you'll see some simple housekeeping items here. We will have time for question and answer later on in today's presentation. What we ask is that you use the Q&A button in the bottom or the chat feature, just so that we make sure we can capture all of your questions and be able to organize them so that we can get responses to them. And then finally, the session is being recorded, so we will share it out afterwards so everyone can have access to it and reference it as well. And then finally, just before we get started, I wanted to thank a number of partners today that helped spread the word and share more about this great informational webinar. The Maine Manufacturers Association, Label and Harriman, York Region Chamber of Commerce, and the Sevigo Lakes Chamber as well, all help support the promotion of this webinar and getting things together. So we just want to say a note of thanks and appreciation for them. And with that, it's my pleasure to kick off to introduce Alf Anderson, State Director for Advocacy and Outreach for AARP Maine, to really kick us off today. Alf, over to you.
Great, thanks, Colin. I appreciate that introduction, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm very pleased to have a small role in today's webinar. AARP has been advocating nationwide for workers to have an easy way to save for retirement on the job through public-private retirement savings account like Merit. Just too many workers are without access to a retirement savings account at work, just leaving them unprepared for the future. AARP Maine's, I should say, AARP's purpose is to empower people to choose how they live as they age. And we do that work here in the state of Maine through advocacy work like the work we did to assist in getting the legislation passed that led to the creation of the Merit program and other community outreach work that we do, again, with the goal of supporting people as they age and doing everything we can to make life better for people as they get into those later years. So again, I'm very excited to be here. I appreciate you all joining us. And with that, I will turn it over to Beth, I believe.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Beth Bordowitz, the Executive Director of Merit, the Maine Retirement Investment Trust. And I am happy to be here this afternoon with our partners at AARP. We're very grateful to them for helping to organize this webinar. And without further ado, I'm going to get started on the webinar. Today's agenda, the first thing we're going to talk about is the retirement landscape in Maine. Alf mentioned that just a little bit, but with a little bit more detail. But we're going to focus today on what is Merit, what does it mean for employers, what does it mean for your employees, our implementation schedule, which is well underway. I'm going to answer some frequently asked questions, and then the floor will be open to your questions, and we'll have plenty of time for your questions today. So the why. Why did the legislature enact the Maine Retirement Savings Trust, or Merit? And that is because they determined that there is a 41% gap of individuals who do not have access to retirement savings at their workplace. It is documented that individuals are 15 times more likely to save for retirement if they have access to retirement savings at the workplace, and over 200,000 Mainers do not. And that was important to the legislature because they want to see seniors in Maine have a dignified retirement. And there was concern that without the opportunity to easily save for people's future, that there would be inadequate funds for people to have a dignified retirement when they got to retirement age. So in 2021, the legislature enacted this program, at the urging of advocates, including AARP. And we got started just this year. But Maine was not the first program to offer, the first state to offer one of these programs. So we had the great fortune of being able to learn from the states that went ahead of us, that helped us to develop a program that learned from the other states to make it as streamlined as possible, both for employers and for employees. So you can see Maine is the 8th state to start one of these programs. Other states are continuing to adopt legislation and will be starting soon. So just this year, Washington State adopted its legislation. And just in a couple of weeks, Delaware and New Jersey are going to be moving over to the active program part of the slide. So you can see that Maine is in good company. And most important from my perspective is we were able to learn from the programs that went ahead of us to hopefully make this as easy as possible for all of you who are interacting with the program. So what is that program? Merit is required to be offered by all Maine employers that do not currently offer a qualified retirement plan if they have 5 or more Maine employees. So that is employees that have W-2 income attributable to Maine, and they have been in business for 2 years. A covered employee, the employees who are required to be enrolled in Merit, are those who are employed in Maine. So if you're a multi-state employer, you only need to include the employees who have W-2 income from Maine, and you pay unemployment insurance to the state of Maine for those employees. They must be 18 years of age or older and have a social security number. And those last 2 requirements are not really set by the program. They are set because we open a Roth IRA account for each employee, and those are federal requirements to own a Roth IRA in the United States. So if you have a qualified plan, you are exempt from participation in Merit. So that can be a 401k, including a MEP or a PEP, a multiple employer plan or a pooled employer plan. It can be a 403b, a 403a. It can be a simple or IRA or a SEP IRA. So if you have any one of those plans, then you are exempt from Merit. If you received an access code from us, you will need to certify that you are exempt. We'll talk about that process a little later. The primary features of Merit that you need to know about, it is automatic enrollment for the employees. So from the employee perspective, they are automatically enrolled in the program. Of course, they're enrolled by their employer. I will say that is currently the best practice for any retirement program that is getting started, is to have that automatic enrollment, and then employees need to opt out if they do not wish to participate in the program. The participation is of course voluntary. It is the employee's money, and they can choose to opt out, and we make it easy for them to opt out if that is what they choose to do. We have set this up as a public-private partnership. So Merit is professionally managed by Vestwell. You may be familiar with Vestwell. They also manage part of the state's 529 program. So they have a niche in state-based financial programs. They manage, of those states that I showed you on that earlier slide, they manage 8 of those 10 active programs, and are also going to be managing that New Jersey and Delaware program. So they have vast experience in managing these programs and in trying to make them as streamlined and easy to work with for employers as possible. Vestwell partners with Bank of New York Mellon, which is a large custodial bank. So all of the Roth IRAs that are open for program savers are custodied at Bank of New York Mellon. Again, a well-known, steady financial institution. And our goal is to keep it as simple as possible for both the employers and the employees. So as an employer, you have 3 basic things that you need to do. You need to first register on the meritsaves.com portal. you need to then send the contributions. So your employees, you will be deducting the funds from your employees' payroll, and you'll be sending the contributions through the portal. And then as an employer, you'll do the ongoing maintenance. So as employees separate from you or join your team, they will need to be either identified as terminated or added to your roster of employees. This program is at no cost to the employer. The program charges no fees to the employer. And we work as closely as possible as we can with payroll processes so that we can make this as easy for you to manage by working with your payroll processor. Some of the details. For the employees, they will be, again, automatically enrolled in a Roth IRA. The default provisions are that 5% of an employee's wages will be automatically deducted from their paycheck. That amount will increase 1% per year up to a maximum of 10%. That's assuming that they have been in the program for 6 months. So for this year, employees who are making contributions before July 1st, that their contribution will increase 1% in January, and they do receive notice of that increase. It doesn't just happen to them. And the default investment, if the employee doesn't make any other choice, they will be invested, their funds will be invested for the first 30 days in a capital preservation fund. So that is a money market fund. And thereafter in a target date suite of funds with an expectation of retirement age of 65. The target date suite of funds are professionally managed funds that become more conservative as the saver gets closer to retirement age. An employee can change all of that. They can, as I mentioned before, they can opt out of the plan entirely. And they can do that by making a phone call or going online or sending us a piece of paper, a form. So they can, again, opt out entirely. They can choose to contribute any percentage of their wages that makes sense for them. So rather than the 5%, they might say, oh, I'm way behind and I got to start at 9%, and they can set their deduction to anywhere between 0 and 100%. So they can start it off at 9 or 10% if that's what they need to do. If they're just getting their toes wet and they want to see if this works for them, they can set it at 2 or 3% and see how that goes for them. So again, entirely up to the employee, the percentage of their wages that they choose to contribute. And the employees can choose their investment options. So in addition to that capital preservation fund and target date suite of funds, the program offers an international equity fund and a bond fund. Employees can mix and match. They can do 50% in the capital preservation and 50% in the bond fund, whatever they feel is appropriate for them. So, and we do have a lot of detailed information about the investments on the website, meritsaves.com. So this is how most employers are going to get started. You're going to receive an email. It's going to be from Merit. And then the subject line will be different, but it will mention Merit, and because we are sending a series of emails, so you should have received one this week. I like to highlight this email because although it says from Merit, you can see that it says also no reply at someday.com. And I will say that definitely throws a lot of people off. I get phone calls about who is someday.com. Is that spam? So this is to reassure you, it is not spam. I mentioned that we have our program manager, Vestwell. They at one point merged with a company called Someday, and that is basically a legacy email address that remains. That again, I know it can put people off, so just want to draw your attention to it right away. That is legit. So this is specifically how the program works. Again, the employer is going to receive either an email or a letter from Merit that includes an access code. You will use that access code to upload to register your company and to upload your employees' information into the portal. And then the employer, you are done for the next 30 days. And during those next 30 days, we at the program will be reaching out to each of your employees with the information that you provided, either an email or by physical letter, and letting them know their choices. Again, that they can do nothing. They can keep the standard choices that I reviewed on the previous slide, 5%, and automatic escalation and the default investment. They can customize their account however they choose. Again, customize their contribution amount, customize their investment, or they can opt out. They will hear from us 3 times in those 30 days to make their decision. So after the 30 days are over, then the employers begin their payroll contributions. So that could be almost up to 2 weeks after the 30 days are over, because it's going to be your next ordinary course payroll after the 30 days have passed. Then you'll begin doing your payroll deductions, and you will get notice from us that it's time to start doing your payroll. So this is a sort of a deep dive into the portal, just to give you an idea of how easy it is to register with Merit, again, at meritsaves.com. So as you can see on the right side of this, on the first screen you'll come to after you set up your account, and that's basically like you set up every other account that you have with a password, username, etc. You'll then enter your company information. That's going to be the primary contact, physical address, confirm your EIN, and phone number, etc. So basic company information. The next screen, you're going to set your payroll up. This is very important. You're going to identify how often you do payroll, what day of the week you do payroll. If you have more than one, what we call a pay group, if you pay one group of employees weekly and another bi-weekly, you then can set up 2 different pay groups. You will on the screen be asked to identify who your payroll provider is. There is a drop down. If your payroll provider is not listed on that drop down, it's really helpful to us if you choose other and put in your payroll provider, because we want to know what payroll providers our employers are using so that we can try to establish relationships with those payroll providers. So really helpful if you can choose other and put in their name if they are not already on the dropdown. And it is a pretty extensive dropdown list at this point that you'll need to scroll through. The next item is to set up your payment. And this is so after you have deducted the pay that is due to your employees, and you will use the payments that you set up to contribute that to their accounts through the portal. You'll identify that in the portal, and then that will be sent to Bank of New York Mellon. You can set up your payments to be either an ACH push, an ACH pull, or you can send your payments by paper check. So that is up to you as the employer, whatever you're more comfortable with, or to get that set up in the system. And then this last screen, the one that you're looking at now, is where you add employees to the program. The required information that we're going to need about your employees are their social security number, first name, last name, birth date, and a physical address. We also ask you for if there's a different mailing address, and also for an email address. If we have the email address, we will be contacting your employees by email as the first choice. And if we don't have an email address, then we will use the physical address. So you can see that you have the opportunity on the screen to upload a file. So we have a template available. You can get that template at meritsaves.com and use that template, and it will fill in the information from the template. And it is pretty slick. It works pretty well. Or you can enter your data manually. Then the last thing you'll do is you'll click that Finish Onboarding button. And once you click that Finish Onboarding button, the next day is when we will start reaching out to your employees. Again, if they're getting a physical letter, that could take almost a week or so with the mail these days. If it's going by email, they should get it the next day. As an employer, you can include different people on your admin team, so you can add them as teammates. Most of the screens on the portal have the add teammate button. So you might want to identify an HR manager or someone else who does backup for your payroll as an admin so that they can work in Merit. And in some instances, your payroll processor may want to be named as an admin, and that is up to each payroll processor, whether they want to have that status or not. So you can check with your payroll processor if they want to be named as an admin. Anyone named as an admin can access and edit the payroll and payroll information. As I mentioned, before you have to start contributing payrolls, you will get a reminder from us. So 4 days before each payroll, you will get something that looks something like what this slide says. It's going to remind you that you have an upcoming pay date and that you should be remembering to submit your contributions to Merit. And you can see it has both an email and a phone number that you can call if you have any questions about that contribution. When you are doing your contributions, you will start on the contributions tab. You should note, so you can see that red button on this tab, that will turn red if your employees made any changes. And normally this is a set it and forget it. So there are not often changes, but there could be, especially in the first payroll or two. And you'll see it will show you to look for the changes that your employees have made and their choices, and you'll update your payroll records. And as you update, so if it says view 4, you update the first one, it's going to tell you that you have 3. So you can just make sure that you are updated. This is a sort of a visual aid to help you as you get your contributions going. And then this is what it will look like when you are ready to make your contributions. And I show you this so you can see that you have the opportunity to upload a file. So if you have a payroll and you've done the contributions and you can run a report, then you can put that into a template and then upload that right into your Merit portal to set the dollar amount that you will be contributing, which depending on how you pay your employees, if your employees have a different schedule each week, that amount might be changing. You can copy from your previous payroll. So once you've done this once, and especially if your employees are basically pretty stable, you can just copy from your most recent payroll and it will auto-fill. And if you've had a change, maybe one employee's changed, you can just make that change after you've copied it. Or you can, of course, enter your data manually. Sorry. I want to just point out that Merit has a very robust help center on the portal, meritsaves.com. So there is an article here that has directions and screenshots for hopefully everything that you're going to need to do in the portal. It's literally step by step for each step. I think that the portal is pretty straightforward, but there may be some situation that I know that people run into where perhaps an employee terminates and you need to check, how do I identify that employee is terminated? There is an article that will show you how to do that step by step. And I strongly recommend the how-to video series. There are just 2 in that series, just how to onboard your company and how to submit contributions. They're both about 3 minutes long, so they're quick, but they are a good visual on how the system will work. The key dates to focus on coming up is June 30, 2024. That is when basically all employers in Maine that have 5 or more employees should be registered with Merit. We passed the April 30th date. That was employers for 15 or more employees. So if you have 15 or more employees, this point you are receiving emails or letters from us reminding you that you've passed that deadline and telling you to hurry up and get registered. And so if you have between 5 and 14 employees, you've got till June 30th to get registered with Merit. So before I get to your questions, I'm just going to walk through some questions that come up quite regularly. So what happens with seasonal employees? We're at that time in Maine, everyone's hiring their seasonal employees. So Every employee who works for you for 120 days needs to be registered with merit. So that's close to 4 months. So if they're going to be there from May to October, they should be registered with merit. Now, as an employer, you can choose to wait till the 120 days have passed, but I urge you to consider registering your employees as you onboard them. For one thing, that's just administratively easy. You take care of all those tasks at the same time. But more importantly, Merit was created to provide retirement savings for employees that do not often have access to retirement savings. And seasonal employees definitely fall into that group. So if you've got employees who come back year after year, and getting them registered in Merit on day one just gives them more opportunity to plan for their retirement. And because Merit is portable and goes with the employee, it is based on the employee's social security number. So if perhaps they're working a different seasonal job in Maine, then they could be contributing to Merit in their other job, and they would be able to just continue contributing into the same account. So it could be a help to your employees to offer Merit right away. But as an employer, you can wait 120 days to register them. Part-time employees do count to the 5 employees. So if you've got 2 full-time and 3 part-time employees, you have 5 employees and they all need to be registered. That is true of temporary employees as long as they are W-2 employees. If you have 1099 employees and temporary 1099 employees, they are not considered employees for Merit. They do not count in the count towards your 5 employees, and they are not registered with Merit. For business owners, they count toward the 5 employees if they receive W-2 wages. If they take only an owner's draw or some other way of getting paid, or as many small business owners maybe don't get paid, then they do not count as employees for either the count or for registration. If you offer a qualified plan to some, but not all of your employees, you are exempt. So that's true even if your plan is perhaps not available to part-time employees or not available until an employee has worked for you for 6 months or a year. Those are somewhat common hurdles that an employee has to pass to participate in a qualified plan. Even with those hurdles, you are exempt, and you would register your exemption at meritsaves.com. So if you have a workplace retirement plan and you received an access code, you would click on certify your exemption or certify my exemption at meritsaves.com. You would enter that access code. You would identify the basis for the exemption and confirm that it is true. And then you will be exempt. So it's a very, very quick process if you have a plan, to just let us know that you have that plan so that we will stop sending you letters. And employees who opt out can opt back in at any time. And of course, they can make changes at any time. They can change their deferral amount. They can change their investment at any time that they choose to. So that is my contact information. I'm at Elizabeth.Bordowitz, mainsaves.org. The number there is the employer helpline, where you can get the most useful information for if you have any questions, particularly on the portal. And again, you register at meritsaves.com. So I am now ready for questions.
That was great.
It looks like there's
so much.
A bunch.
Yeah, thanks for that. There's a lot of questions in the Q&A queue, so I'll start right at the top. Some I think you've already answered, but I'll ask them anyway so you can address them directly. The first question is, do employees need to be full-time or part-time?
So any W-2 employee, even if they work 2 hours a week, if they're a W-2 employee, they do need to be registered.
Excellent, thank you. The next question is, are religious organizations also required to participate as well?
Yes, any employer. So if you are an employer and you're paying employees W-2 wages and you're covering the unemployment insurance for them, then yes, you are required to participate in Merit.
Great, thank you. Let's see our next question. What's the timeline to provide information about the program in different languages?
The information is available in Spanish at this time. And if there are other languages that you are looking for, which I know that there are some languages that are prevalent in Maine, please let us know what languages you're interested in, and we'll see how we can get information for you.
Great. Thank you for that. Let's see. Our next question is, can employees opt out of the annual increase to their contributions?
Yes, they absolutely can. So when employees open their account, if they go online to Merit and they get their account set up, one of the questions they're first asked how much what percentage of their income they would like to contribute. And then the next question they're asked is, do they want to participate in that auto escalation? And they can choose yes or no to that. So that is up to them. And also before there's an escalation, they do get a notice that it will be increasing, and they can take an action at that point as well.
Right. And I know you answered this earlier, you may have just touched on it again, but can employees drop below the 5% contribution?
Absolutely. They can get started with a number that's comfortable for them. So they want to start at 2% and say, oh, look at that, I can handle that. So let me see if I can go up to 3. But yeah, it's especially for people who aren't used to this, trying to figure out the right number. They can take they can see what works best for them.
Great, thank you. Next question is, are withholding percentages applied to gross or net pay?
It is gross pay. So this is post-tax, but it is on gross pay.
Gotcha. Let's see, can employers opt out of receiving emails?
No. So employers will get their emails until they either register or they certify that they are exempt. And once they've registered, they will get the regular emails reminding them to do their contributions.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, next question, and I believe this was on one of the slides before the Help Center page. Regarding the deferral change button, does that information come in via the decisions the employee made with Merit when Merit reached out?
Right, so the deferral change button can come during that 30-day period. I might have to look to my experts from Vestwell for this, but during the 30-day period, it won't be a deferral change because they're just getting started. But after the 30 days have gone by and it's been set up, if there is a change to the deferral amount that is made by the employee, and the way the employer knows is by looking in the dashboard and seeing that deferral change button. And Courtney, if you want to jump in, please do.
Sure, happy to, Beth. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so Beth, exactly what you shared. That alert, I think based on the question here, that button will be red and you'll be able to see the list based on what your employees do. That's exactly right. So if they call in and talk to the customer service team and make a change in their contribution rate there, or if they do it when they log into their own account, you'll get that alert in the portal, as Beth said. And you'll also get that email reminder that I think Beth showed a picture of as part of the presentation that indicates, which employees made that rate change. So you'll see it whenever it is that you log in to make your payroll contributions.
Thank you. I'm going to just quickly introduce Courtney Eccles, who is with Vestwell and is on to help answer any questions that I can't.
Thank you both for that answer. Let's see. So this one says, Beth said you said that there's no charge to the employer, but it's not the case if the employer uses a third-party payroll processor. Our payroll provider will be increasing our weekly and quarterly fees to have merit deductions and payments remitted. The fees are going to add up fast. Is there any reimbursement to the employers for the fees incurred by the payroll processor?
Right. So there is no reimbursement to the employer. I'm going to say I've not heard of a payroll processor charging a weekly or quarterly fee like that, because this is really a pretty straightforward process for most payroll processors. It does depend on your payroll processor. So yeah, I will say several main payroll processors have set up integrations so that it works very seamlessly. If you have a payroll processor that's using a system and then is also going online for you and doing this from the portal for you, I guess that is some additional work for them. And so it might be something that you want to take on yourself to avoid those fees.
Okay, thank you. This next question is actually 4 questions.
Okay.
They were saving up their question, which is fantastic. Question 1, what if the individual is not eligible to contribute to a Roth IRA based on federal income limitations?
Right, so that the individual needs to know, I will say that's pretty rare in this program, but if the individual exceeds the income eligibility for a Roth IRA, that is for them to know, because we don't have any way of knowing an individual's income. So we do not have a way to not accept Roth contributions from an individual who exceeds the income limit. We do have systems in place in the portal so that if an individual is reaching the maximum contribution, they will be cut off. So they will not be allowed to contribute more than the federal maximum through merit. Again, there is an individual responsibility there, because if an individual has another Roth IRA account, we have no way of knowing that either. And so they will not be allowed to contribute under federal law to both a merit Roth IRA and a separate Roth IRA. So again, that is on the individual to be aware of their situation.
So that the employee would need to opt out based on that.
Right, the employee, if their income exceeds the Roth maximum, they would need to opt out.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And the second part is there any action needed if an employer has fewer than 5 employees?
So if an employer has fewer than 5 employees and they received the access code, they do need to go online to meritsaves.com and click again on certify my exemption. And the reason for the exemption will be fewer than 5 employees. So they will need to do that so that they stop the flow of emails and letters from us, just so that we know that they are exempt because they have fewer than 5 employees. So the data we have for businesses is based on 2023. It's a snapshot in time, and it was for all employers who had an annual average of 5 or more employees, basically through 2023. So if your employee count has changed, if someone has left, or someone left and you didn't replace them and now you're down to 4, we don't really have a way of knowing that. So you would have gotten your access code, and we just encourage you to just go ahead and certify your exemption.
Excellent. So now a sort of a follow-up to that one. So what if you go from 4 to 5 employees? So they wouldn't have gotten the access code, but now maybe they've hired and expanded and have a 5th employee. What's the process for that and potential timing?
Okay, perfect. So there are 2 answers to that. If you're really excited and want to just get started in merit as soon as you can and have that opportunity to offer that to your employees, you can reach out to the program and ask for an access code. And basically, once a month, we generate new access codes. So you can reach out to the program, give them the information, and they will generate an access code for you. Otherwise, you will get picked up. So this is not static. We're going to be looking at new employers with 5 or more employees every year. We'll be getting a new list. And so we'll pick you up, and then you will have, you will be on the cycle for 2025 to register with merit.
Excellent. Thank you. And then the last in this series of questions, what happens if the business chooses doesn't acknowledge the letter, or they choose not to enroll in merit?
So if you choose not to enroll, it's not really a choice, because of course it is required by state law, and we will be starting to enforce that under the statute. The Attorney General is charged with enforcing that. So if you choose not, if you choose not to register with merit, there is a statutory fine that will be assessed, and the Attorney General will be enforcing that.
Great. Let's see. Next question is, are nonprofit 501c3 organizations required to participate?
Absolutely, they are. Yes, just like every other organization. And I will say I did a presentation specifically for the Maine Association of Nonprofits. So if this organization is a member of MAMP, they can also take a look at that presentation, which is recorded on the Maine Association of Nonprofits website.
Excellent. This one's related to seasonal employees. They asked, what about J1s or H-2B visa employees?
Yeah, so the rules are the same as J1, H-2B visa employees all have a federal identification number. So if they're going to be working for you for more than 120 days, they should be registered with merit.
Let's see. Do employees that work occasionally need to be registered? The employee may work one shift a month or every other month as needed just to fill in.
Yep, that comes up quite a bit. And yes, they should be registered. So that gives them, again, these are employees who probably don't have much opportunity to save for work, but for retirement. So if they should have that opportunity, they should be registered. And of course, if they choose not to, they can opt out. I know a lot of those instances, it's someone who might be retired and picking up a shift to help out somewhere in a family store or something like that. And so they might choose to opt out, but they should be registered.
Perfect. Will we be sharing the PDF of this presentation? I know the recording will be shared. I don't know if the plan was to share the slide deck as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either. But definitely the recording will be shared with everyone who's registered.
Yeah, the recording will definitely be sent out. So, but if there are obviously other questions, you can respond to that email when it comes out, and we can get that information to folks. Are employees that are eligible based on, sorry, this is a clarifying question. Are employees eligible based on the days worked per year or hours worked per year?
So it is days that they are on the payroll. So that 120 days is so you hire someone in May and they work one day in May and one day in June and one day in July and one day in August. They've now been on your payroll 120 days. So it's how long they've basically been on your payroll, not how many physical days that they've worked or how many hours they've worked.
Okay. This person asked, what should I do if my business did not get an access code?
So if you did not get an access code, you can call that number 833-608-8811, and they will see if the access code was maybe sent to the wrong person, because sometimes that happens. Again, we had data and that perhaps the person who's the contact in that data retired. We've had people who've retired. We've had people who've passed away. So you can call that number and see if there is an access code for you that perhaps was sent to a different contact who was, a former contact with the Maine Department of Labor.
Are you able to put the slide back up that had the contact info? That might be helpful for folks to have.
I can.
That wasn't a question from the queue.
No, I gather that. I will put that back up.
And I think you addressed this one a little while ago, but just to reiterate, the question was, is there a penalty for the employer if they do not register by the June 30th deadline?
So there is a penalty. You know what? I'm having a hard time getting the slide back up. There is a penalty for the employer if they haven't registered by the June 30 deadline. But that penalty will not kick in right away. Our goal is to get everyone registered. It is that our goal is to get everyone registered, not to penalize them. So we are not looking to penalize anyone. Hopefully everyone will get registered. I'm not sure if that presentation is now
There it
All
is.
right.
There
There
we
we
go.
go.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. Let's see. Has a final decision been made on automatic re-enrollment? If an employee opts out, will they be forced back into the program?
Right. So for those who are not familiar, the statute says that the board may have automatic re-enrollment no more frequently than once a year. So we are still in our first year, and so have not really focused on the automatic re-enrollment at this time. That's something that's actually showing up in retirement accounts, retirement provisions, all types of retirement plans. So I think we're going to see more of our colleagues and peers doing that, and we'll get some sense for how we can make it work. But at this point, that's not a focus, and it certainly won't happen in 2025. And so we'll be looking to see what we do in 2026 after we've been, through 2 full years.
Great, thank you. How will the employer know if an employee has or has not opted out?
Right, so that is very clear in the portal. So when you go into your employer portal, you'll be able to see whether an employee, what percentage they would like to have contributed, or whether they have opted out. So then they will not show as an active employee once they have opted out. And I don't know if Courtney, if there's anything to add to that, but I'll look to you to add if there is something I'm missing there.
No, nothing to add. Just like you said, it'll be part of those emails, and it's also very clear in the portal.
Awesome, thank you both. If an employer isn't matching employees' contributions, is there any need to set up an ACH?
Right, so employers are not allowed to match a contribution. So let me be very clear about that. Employers cannot match contributions, but the ACH is set up to make the employee's contribution. So the way this works is that an employer, let's say I am your employee and I have earned $100 for the week and I've chose to contribute 5%. So as an employer, you will show on that employee on my pay stub that there is a Roth IRA contribution of $5, and you don't pay me that $5 in my pay. Instead, you'll hold that $5 and you'll transmit it to my Roth IRA through the portal using that ACH.
Thank you. If a business has fewer than 5 employees, can they still participate?
Sadly, no. This kind of breaks my heart every time I say that, but currently only employers who are required to can participate in the program, and this is sort of a gray area of federal law that we are trying to work on, but right now the answer has to be no. However, if let's say you have 5 employees and you drop to 4 and you're going to be hiring again, then that's 5 employees. So we know that there's going to be people around the edges who, someone leaves and it takes you a month to replace them or 2 months to replace them. That's fine. You can continue to be in the program. Or if you have 5 employees for sort of part of the year, absolutely, you can register for the program during that time that you've got the 5 employees.
Thanks for that clarification. Let's see, next question is, we have many employees that have full-time jobs and only work for us part-time. Are we responsible to know if the other employer has a 401k offered to the employee?
Nope, that's up to the employee. So the employee, if they can, there are some opportunities to contribute to both a 401k and the Roth, but if they, it's up to the employee, they can opt out. You're not responsible as an employer to know your employee's other situation.
Let's see, the next question is, when were the first access codes sent to employers? I suspect several clients have deleted, lost, or ignored them.
Right, so the first access codes were sent on January 17th, and those were sent to every employer in the state of Maine. And then if you had 15 or more employees starting in mid-March, March 17th, you started getting you got a series of 3 emails or letters with that access code, like, 6 weeks before and a month before and a couple of weeks before the April 30th deadline. If you are an employer of 5 to 14 employees, you started getting that second series of access codes starting in mid-April, heading toward the June 30th deadline, and you should receive it 3 times. In fact, I know for sure that just this week, access codes were sent again to all employers of 5 to 14 employees, and they'll get another one before the June 30th deadline. So if you haven't seen it, you should definitely call 833-608-8811 to find out where your access code is, because again, our information is really good but not perfect, and it could be that it was sent to an employee who was since left the business and whose email is not being monitored, or something that simple.
Yeah. Great. And you just answered the next question we had in the queue, was what to do if we never got a letter. And the answer is call the number on your screen and see if you can get that access code. We have just a couple of questions left in our queue. So if you had something else that you wanted to ask, please take a moment to put it into the Q&A section here on the Zoom. We do have a few minutes remaining, so we want to make sure we get everyone's questions answered as much as possible. So last call for questions, I guess. And the next one in the queue is if an employer has inconsistency on the total count of employees, such as hiring and terminating within a short period of time, at what time period would you have to add or register an employer? And she clarified, or someone else clarified, agreeing having 4 or sometimes 5 as it changes frequently. So I guess that's the question, if someone's employee count fluctuates.
Yep. When we know that happens right around that 5 mark, someone leaves and all of a sudden you're below. So what I would say is, if you have 5, if you basically average 5 most of the time, go ahead and register, and then just, you can keep going when you drop down to 4 with the expectation that you're going to be hiring that 5th employee. So it doesn't make any sense to be in and out. That's not good for you in terms of having your cadence of just doing your regular payroll, and it's not good for your employees in terms of having regular retirement savings. So if you generally have 5, even if you've dropped below, if you're going to be going back up to 5, it's sort of, you have that average of 5. So just keep going forward with merit.
Great. Thank you for that. Okay, last question in the queue. So this is really the last call for additional questions. Please pop them into the Q&A if you do have any additional questions. But the last one we have right now says, for servers, will the percentage be applied to wages only, or also tips that are processed through payroll?
So under the definition of wages, tips count as part of the gross wage, and so they should be, so the amount of the 5% is off the gross pay, which does include tips. I do know and acknowledge that there is an issue occasionally where people get paid their tips separately, and there are these $0 paychecks, which again, it should be coming off the gross pay, but you can't take 5% off of 0. So you're going to need to work that out with the employee. But yeah, that's the best answer I can give for that. I know that's a situation that comes up.
Great. Well, Beth, thank you so much for all the information and answering all of those questions. We did one right under the wire. There we go. One more question. Are there any materials or flyers to share that can help explain this to employees?
Absolutely. So if you go to meritsaves.com under the resources page, there is basically a 1-page fact sheet that you can either download and post for your employees or hand out to your employees. It is available in both English and Spanish. And it's something I often recommend that employers provide that. So that way you as the employer is not the one, the information is not coming from you. It's coming from the program as we've described it in that flyer.
Excellent. Any parting thoughts before we wrap up here, Beth?
Well, I want to thank everyone for excellent questions. So thank you for your attendance on a nice, on a beautiful, almost summer afternoon. Thank you for all of your questions and your interest in Merit. And again, thank you to AARP for helping to facilitate this and putting those questions to me, Alf.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Thank you so much for sharing all the information and all the work that you're putting into this, Beth. And thank you to everyone who joined us today and shared your questions. Best of luck for the busy summer season that's coming. And with that, hope you have a great afternoon.